Good day, everyone. Let's assume oil crosses like $95 barrel a day in recent escalations, and Pentagon is moving their more assets into the region. Insurance rates for shipping passing through Strait of Hormuz jumped by more than 30% in a week. And here is the part most Americans are not being told clearly. If this becomes a long war with Iran, it will not look like Iraq. It will be a different war. It will look like economic shock, a cyber paralysis, and a regional wildfire. And the wildfire is happening now in the UAE. And that will change everything. I have spent nearly 2 decades in newsroom and in research watching how wars are sold to the public and how they actually unfold behind closed doors. Here we separate noise from reality. You are watching In Focus with Dr. Adeel. Now let's discuss this. The question is America going into a long war with Iran? And if it is going into a long war, how long it will stretch? So, but here, the real question is if it does, who breaks first? Militarily, economically, and politically. In 2024 and 2025, America is not fighting from a position of infinite surplus. US national debt crossed 34 trillions early this year. Inflation pressures have eased a little bit compared to 2022 because of the COVID, but food, housing, and energy costs remain politically sensitive. And now the biggest question. Imagine oil at 110 or 120 per barrel. Are you still with me? Good, because this is interesting. And it is very uncomfortable. Roughly 20% of the global oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran does not need to fully close it. It only needs to disrupt it. And it can disrupt Strait of Hormuz through mines, drones, proxy harassment, and what will happen? Insurance will spike and the market will panic. Even 10 to 15% sustained supply disruption could push energy prices up sharply within weeks. And it is happening. And energy shocks do not stay in the Middle East. They land in American gas stations. And here where the story takes a turn most people do not expect. If we talk about numbers, during the Iraq War era, US war spending peaked at over 2 trillion cumulatively. Today, the US already spending heavily for Ukraine, and US is also maintaining deterrence in Indo-Pacific. That is also very expensive. In October 2024 alone, emergency supplemental defense package ran into tens of billions. And now add a sustained air and naval campaign against Iran as well. So carrier strike group cost millions per day to operate. And precision munitions are also very costly, very expensive. On the contrary, replacement systems are also expensive. And for that, you need logistics. And logistics are also very expensive. It costs a lot of money. And this is before ground escalation. Ground escalation means if America is actually sending their ground troops, which is not going to happen in near future. Iran does not need to defeat United States militarily. They are not in this planning. What they are going to do, they need to stretch it, and they will stretch it. Iran's doctrine over the last decade has been very clear, and that is asymmetric warfare, proxy networks, Hezbollah in Lebanon, militia groups in Iraq and Syria, Houthis in Yemen. The Houthis alone have already demonstrated the ability to disrupt Red Sea's shipping in late 2023 and early 2024. What will happen at that time? Major uh, shipping companies routed around Africa, right, increasing transit time by 10 to 14 days. That's not symbolic. That's economic warfare, and it costs a lot of money. But here's another thing, and it becomes very serious. When Washington attacked Iran directly, um, and Iran's response was also very direct, but it was regional. And there were three fronts which we need to look into very carefully. First, Israel's northern border, where Hezbollah possesses an estimated around 100,000 to 150,000 rockets uh, and missiles. We can call them legacy rockets. They are not very modern. So they can overwhelm air defense system through their sheer volume. Second is Iraq and Syria. US bases have already been attacked, and they faced drone and rocket attacked in recent days. So in recent days, Iran attacked multiple times. And the third area is the maritime choke points. This is very interesting area. The Strait of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb, these are two choke points. Now here, what most people get it wrong. They think war means tanks crossing borders. No, modern escalation means insurance premiums. That's very interesting. Cyber attacks on ports, direct attacks on ports, sending drones to the ports, which is happening these days. Attacks on the pipelines, all right? Drone swarms on the infrastructures. So remember in 2019, attack on the Saudi oil facilities temporarily knocked out roughly 5% of the global oil supply overnight. So 5% market panicked instantly. Now imagine a coordinated version of that in 2026, and the recent attack on the Aramco facility. So with AI-assisted drones targeting cyber operations and synchronized proxy action, which is the strategy of Iran. You won't believe how fragile global supply chains still are. And this brings us to the real twist. What if the real battlefield is not Iran? You must be surprised. What if your electricity grid, your fuel prices, and your retirement account? Because here the uncomfortable truth. Iran knows one thing very clearly, that it cannot win a conventional war against United States, and at this time combined with US and Israel. But what it can do, it can raise the cost high enough to fracture political unity inside America. High oil prices, market volatility, and rising the insurance costs, with cyber disruptions and military casualties from drones and rockets. Not decisive blows, but persistent bleedings. And democracies struggle with slow bleeding conflicts. Let me put it bluntly. If oil crosses 120 and stays there for months, what will happen? US inflation could tick upward again. If shipping disruptions expand and supply chains delays could return, and if region allies pull deeper in, Washington faces simultaneous escalation management. It stretches the timeline, stretches the treasury, and stretch public patience as well. This is not battlefield victory. This is a strategic exhaustion. Remember that 30% jump in the maritime insurance? That's not a headline. That is a signal. That is a signal that the markets are already pricing risk. Now imagine that risk multiplied across the region. What will happen then? That's a very difficult part. But we are still not at the hardest question. So, is America heading into a long war with Iran? In my opinion, it depends on one thing: restraint versus retaliation cycles. And we are not seeing restraint as well, and we are seeing a lot of retaliation cycles. If early exchanges are contained right now, if back channels diplomacy remains open, which unfortunately we see it's not happening, and if regional actors are pressured to stand down, escalation can go down. But unfortunately, we are not seeing it. And if tit for tat becomes prestige driven, and if domestic politics demands visible punishment, and proxies escalate faster than diplomats can de escalate, then yes, this stretches. And if it stretches, it regionalizes. And if it regionalizes, the economic shock spreads, not in a single explosion, but in waves. Thank you very much for watching.